Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to this occasion. I'm always surprised when I'm invited to a thing like this because I wonder, what have I got to say? At the risk of confusing the poor translators even more, I just want to warn you about what's coming and also console you some. I was told a long time ago, if you want to make a lot of people fall asleep, talk about philosophical foundations. Well, I hope it won't be sleep-inducing. Let me just begin. The civil society movement, known as the Gülen movement, is an international movement dedicated to promoting world peace through dialogue and education. The movement has its origins in the thought and writings of the Turkish Sufi scholar Fethullah Gülen. Though the movement began as a purely Turkish and Muslim phenomenon, it is now active all over the world, including my hometown, I might say, Lubbock, Texas, among a great variety of cultures and religions. Their activities focus on meeting the basic needs of people to increasing mutual understanding and peace. Consequently, many of their efforts are spent on education. The movement is grounded in three mutually consistent and interrelated grounds: the values of Islam, the specifically Sufi thought of Said Nursi, and also in general conceptual and philosophical reasons. Others can give and have given better accounts of the movement's roots in Islam and Nursi. In this talk, I propose to explain the third ground, general philosophical reasons. To that end, I identify and explicate two main strains of philosophical reasons to be found in the movement's grounds. Pardon me for terminology. Teleological reasons, which point to the value of diversity in society and underwrite the movement's characteristic value of Hizmet, service. And second, deontological reasons, pointing to the central value of persons and underwriting the movement's characteristic value of Hoşgörü, tolerance. Since these reasons for these values are available to anyone, they make the movement a good model for people of all cultures and all faiths. In philosophical ethics, most theories fall into two broad categories: those that appeal to the consequences of an action to explain its value. These are called the teleological theories. And those that appeal to some features of the action itself, apart from whatever consequences it may have, these are called deontological theories. Most ethicists now concede that neither type of theory by itself is adequate to account for all our considered moral judgments. Both types of considerations seem to play a role in our ethical deliberations. In other words, to decide whether an action is right or wrong, frequently we have to look at both the consequences it has and what kind of action it is. Both are important. In his writings, Fethullah Gülen appeals to both kinds of considerations, along with arguments, of course, from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet. And we can see both types of reasoning at work in the grounding of two of the movement's characteristic virtues, as I said, Hizmet and Hoşgörü, service and tolerance. When Gülen talks about activities involving Hizmet, service to others, including education, care for the poor, disaster relief, and the like, he frequently appeals to the consequences of these actions. It's obvious that one consequence of such activities is direct good to the person or people served. An educated person is better off than before, and so on. However, Gülen also appeals to broader, more general, and more remote consequences. One activity Gülen recommends, and that we're here to celebrate to some extent, is interfaith and intercultural dialogue. and he frequently argues for its desirability on the grounds that the existence of diversity of religion and culture is itself a valuable thing. He speaks frequently of the beauty of diversity, and he also speaks of its instrumental value. That there is more than one point of view is good for people on both sides. One reason for that is that it is good for people to understand views other than their own. This argument has similarities to John Stuart Mill's argument for liberty of speech and thought. It's good for everyone if everyone is allowed to form his or her own beliefs, especially on those subjects that matter most. Questions of value, questions of religion, and so on. Mill asks us to consider the possibilities where two people disagree. One of three things is the case. First, maybe the minority view is right and the majority is wrong. In that case, it's obviously in the interests of the majority to be exposed to the correct view. Perhaps both have parts of the truth, but neither has the whole truth. In that case, it is in the interests of both to help inform one another, so all can come to a more complete understanding. Finally, perhaps the majority is right and the minority is wrong. Even in that case, Mill says, even in that case, it is better that the minority be allowed to express its view, because the discussion that ensues can lead those, even those who already have the right opinion, to a better understanding of their own view. Mill doesn't consider the case when both are wrong, which I think probably happens a lot. But I take it that in that case, there's certainly no harm in letting everyone express their own views. And the chances of someone coming to a true understanding are better if people are discussing with one another than if they are not. Right? So that one's an easy case to make. Therefore, dialogue always has better consequences than isolation. This argument is stated in terms of belief. John Stuart Mill states it that way. But the reasoning, I think, applies equally to other kinds of diversity, diversity of culture, diversity of cuisine even, other kinds of diversity and other values than truth. So, diversity has good consequences. Gülen also appeals to deontological reasoning, and it is when he's talking about the virtue of tolerance that this line of argument dominates. To start with, we should note that while Gülen frequently uses the Turkish word tolerans, that's really an accommodation to Western ways of thinking about these issues. The word that better describes the value he has in mind is Hoşgörü, which is a much more positive notion, perhaps closer to respect than tolerance. Tolerance is too weak a notion. We can tolerate something we despise just because we're too lazy or frightened or busy to do anything about it. Hoşgörü calls for more from us than mere tolerance. To be exhibiting hoşgörü to my neighbor's beliefs and actions, I must not just grudgingly allow him to go on, but I must have a positive attitude of respect to him or her as a person. Why have this respect? The location of value in the respect due to a person is a deontological consideration. For example, one of Immanuel Kant's formulations of his categorical imperative is entirely in terms of respect for persons. But we need not go along with Kant completely, I think you'll be relieved to hear. For example, Kant identifies personhood with reason. To be a person, and so worthy of respect, is simply to be capable of abstract reasoning. But a Kantian-style argument can be made based on other conceptions of what it is to be a person. One way to think of this is to think about what we value in ourselves, and insofar as we see that others are like us, we ought to value them the same way. If we do that, we will find that there are two things every person has and invests with importance: beliefs and desires. I have a picture of the world, a complex set of beliefs about what it's like and how it works, and that picture forms the basis of all of my plans. I have built that picture from information from many sources. One of the things I see is that other people have the same mental equipment as me. They have the same kind of mind and same kind of senses. Insofar as I can see that they are like me, then logic demands that I accord their picture the same respect as I accord my own picture. Thank you. Even if I think they're wrong, I owe them that respect. In fact, an overwhelming majority of the things I believe are based on information gathered by others. Think about how science works and informs what we do. So my beliefs already necessarily incorporate respect for others. I have no choice but to trust them the same way I trust myself. I'm glad that's just water. The argument works the same way for desires. I have desires. Some are based on biological reality. Some are based on more complicated facts. In general, I desire something because I take it to be valuable. I see that other people had the same sort of biological and psychological constitution as me, and they take things to be valuable for the same sorts of reasons. Therefore, insofar as I think my desires are reasonable and ought to be respected, logic dictates that I owe the same respect to the desires of others. This is even clearer when we see that many of our more complicated desires are what they are because of our beliefs. Right? Desire for food is one thing, but desire to have a nice Merlot with dinner is not such a basic biological thing. So, other people's desires should be respected in part because their beliefs ought to be respected. So the two things fit together. Obviously, this respect is not absolute. Some actions are so evil as to be intolerable and ought to be prevented. Children and people with some kinds of mental defects can't be left to form whatever beliefs and desires they like. People who are in the position of teacher or parent or guardian have special obligations to mold the beliefs and desires of others. But, by and large, we owe it to other people to allow them to order their lives as seems best to them. One interesting consequence of these two lines of reasoning is that, like natural theology, they presuppose no allegiance to any particular religion or scriptures. So, while reasoning from specifically Muslim sources is available, even plentiful, in support of the Gülen movement's goals and activities, these two philosophical lines of reasoning are available to anyone. In addition to Muslims, Christians, and Jews, this kind of reasoning can also appeal to Buddhists and Hindus and atheists and agnostics. One need not even believe in objective morality. All that is necessary is to believe that it is better for people to flourish than not, for the teleological style argument, and that one ought to treat equals equally, for the deontological argument. Anyone who believes even that much can support and endorse, and I might add, emulate, the actions and activities of the Gülen movement. Thank you very much.